We have a clock. Not yet.
And it didn't update.
Yeah, according to the clock.
I'll pull it down.
All right, live, good. Good afternoon, all. Going to order the Board of Commissioners meeting. Housing Authority, today is Tuesday, March 11th, 3:35 p.m. We have no speakers from the community who are registered to speak. I'd ask for a motion to approve our meeting minutes from our meeting February 11th, unless there's any comments, concerns.
I'll make that motion.
Can I get a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Right. Proposed action item, resolution, item number 03-25-06, resolution approving addendum.
I have the floor?
Unless you want me to explain it, it's just,
It's
formal, but go ahead.
Absolutely. Thank you, Chairman. If you turn to page 6, it'll just basically outlines the justification of why we need the extension for the 250, up to 250 hours. Allows us time to clean up data and address any issues that are currently within our current system, so that as we convert over to the new software, everything is clean and ready to go. So we have ran into some hurdles that has delayed progress, which has, basically required us to ask for the extension to push back our go live date from August of 2025 to, I want to say March of 2020, the end of March of 2026. And it allows us time to, clean it up and then also address our day-to-day responsibilities, because this is a heavy lift.
So is that a 12 month? Almost like a 12-month?
Approximately.
Sure.
Well, August is about 7, because August is
Right, okay,
Yes.
got it.
But page 6 provides the overall summary.
Any other questions, comments, concerns?
It's up to, they know specifically that they're going to need 250 hours, or could it be less or more, or is this just what we're allowing?
We're allowing 250, not to exceed 250. We don't believe we're going to use all those hours, but it gives us that cushion in case something else comes up that we're unaware of.
Understood.
That creates a delay.
Gotcha.
Can I get a motion to approve?
Motion made, Pastor.
Get a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
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 That concludes our action items for today. It may be appropriate, given current economic conditions within the authority and some proposed changes from the federal government through HUD that may or may not directly affect us, to open the floor to discussion about some of these changes and reactions from senior staff, executive director, and then any other comments or concerns or questions that may arise from board members.
My first question, Chiquita, is have you seen any movement specifically from the residents as it deals with the shutdown of certain departments? I don't know if it got to Albany or anything like that, because actually we're hearing stuff going on all over the country. And now they're talking about closing down the federal building, Ryan Federal Building. And so that's the question, whether or not it's coming in, you have specific residents that's being affected by it, that's going to actually impact how you're going to serve some of the people. They can't make their rents, you know, what are we going to do with that? If anything, can we do anything? And also, do you see your monies, you know, our monies, you know, being reduced in any of the programs that they're actually talking about? Because they're targeting it all. You know, there's nothing that they're leaving untouched.
Great question, Pastor. I would say, as it relates to our residents and how it directly affects them, I necessarily have not heard that, you know, anyone has lost their jobs or to that nature. But normally, I would not hear that. That's typically what I would consider deeper into the weeds as it relates to re-exams and, you know, collecting that information. Staff has not necessarily shared and said there's been this large hit of, you know, our residents who've lost their income and we're having this mass re-examination or interims as it relates to their portion of the rent. So I have not heard that, but I can't confidently say that none of them have not been affected by it.
Right along that line, if you don't mind, if we all remember, which we do, when COVID happened, it was massive.
Yes.
Yeah, and with the current administration saying that they're going to scrape all this stuff, and our monies are reduced significantly, you know, does that tie in as well to how we're going to govern?
Yes. I'm going to move over into that area, but to continue to complete my thought as it relates to your initial question, I haven't heard it. When COVID occurred, you know, that was something that staff said, we're getting a lot of, you know, individuals that have lost their job, been laid off, hours cut, you know, we're busy, can I have overtime? You know, it created, you know, a burden on staff. That has not been the case as of yet that I've heard. I can tell you that I have heard on personal relationship, you know, information and other family members, not necessarily mine, but, you know, staff. Some people have lost their jobs or, you know, are really concerned about losing their jobs because of where they work. Mm-hmm. But I can't necessarily speak on these specific agencies. That's just in conversation. But to your point as it relates to the bottom line of the Housing Authority, we have not seen any significant cuts as of yet. We continue in our various, I would say, our industry-leading agencies that focus on the advocacy of, you know, our fundings, particularly in Washington. They continue to advocate and push for, you know, maintaining our status quo as it relates to our subsidies and programs that we currently have in place. As you know, that Washington was forced to release any funds that were frozen. We do have one program in which we have not received, or the award that we were granted, the funds have not yet been released. We were told that it would be this week. We're waiting. I continue to watch it because I'm the one that I have to go in and accept it. So I'm hopeful that will hopefully come into our accounts soon. So to immediately answer your question, nothing has been cut, but I can't tell you what's going to happen 6 months from now. We continue to watch it very closely. What I will say is, on the state level, we have senators throughout the state of New York that are, again, advocating for housing authorities to ensure that we try to maintain as much funding as possible within their, power that allows the housing authorities to function, that rely on state funding as well. They're also advocating on behalf of insurance, the rise in insurance costs. So there's some good news there, that there's, market studies along the way that hopefully will minimize the impact that the cost of insurance has, affected many housing authorities, one being ours. Am I answering your question?
100%.
Okay.
So I would ask a question about contingency planning.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Obviously there's a challenge with fully understanding the future, particularly with the volatility of some of these executive orders that come out and then get retracted, or as the case may be, makes it very difficult for planning purposes. But if we went through another period like COVID, where we were severely challenged in collecting rents, and we didn't have, income from our other sources, we'd be in some deep fiscal trouble.
Absolutely.
I don't know exactly how we can create a reserve when we don't have too much to reserve in the first place. But I would suspect that, we would have to have some contingency planning, which may or may not include layoffs ourselves. And as difficult as that is, we have to survive. And our first responsibility is to make sure that our tenants have homes. Our second responsibility is obviously to the health of the organization, and our third is to the employees. But we need to come up with some sort of a plan, because there's a very distinct reality that money is going to disappear quickly.
So, is there, no, I was in the same train of thought. I don't know if you was going to address that, but is there a way for us to look at what if, right? Because tenants do pay rent, and I know there's different percentage that might not be able to cover what people pay, but to Chairman's point is, can we come up with what if this happens, or is it too crazy to really look at and say, hey, what if they cut this? What if they cut this? Then we're not caught with whatever that saying is, with our pants down. But, like COVID, we did, right? We got caught, but I think
So
my
COVID, yeah.
Right.
My thought would be, we're not the only ones having this discussion. So there's got to be, through FATA or one of our affiliated organizations, one of our, advocacy groups, this conversation going on where they're creating contingency planning that we may align ourselves with, so as to not dump something on staff that's already overburdened. Perhaps we could look into what the advocacy groups, if you haven't already, are saying about, a worst case scenario.
Well, there's a few things that came my way, so I'm going to try to address it in different factors. First, to address your initial concern in terms of the contingency plan. That discussion, HUD has started to push out ideas, in terms of if you're running a Section 8 program, halt your issuance of vouchers, watch your numbers. These are things that we were doing prior to this, right? Because we do watch the budget on a consistent basis. So in terms of being conservative, we started that before this concern became an additional concern. So in that particular area, we have taken on as much, I would say we have made changes or cuts necessary to ensure that we can prolong the assistance in that department as long as we possibly can. And that also includes being able to pay our staff, right? So that's the Section 8 program. The good thing about the Housing Authority for us is that our portfolio is so diverse. We don't wholly rely on federal funding. We have tax credits, we have private funding, which are less restrictive as it relates to those developments themselves. And so we're not solely relying on federal subsidy. Yes, we have properties that are 100% federalized. To that end, the properties outside of the federal properties, we are required in many of these deals to maintain a level of reserve. Now, as Chairman mentioned, as well as Commissioner Bob Simple mentioned, you know, funds do run out. And then what does that look like? It's really based on where it happens and, you know, where those funds are being cut, because that will determine what we can and cannot do, because some of those funds and some of those programs are restricted, and what you can do defines the next step, or what you can't do. So I can't tell you as a, you know, a whole what type of contingency plan we would have. I can tell you that we are in a decent position to carry ourselves at least for 6 months or so. We've been watching it, and I mean, it's not a long time, but it buys you time as opposed to a housing authority that is fully reliant on federal funding. So, to your point, and to Chairman Whalen's point, yes, there are discussions. Has it gotten or narrowed down to the point where housing authorities are putting their heads together and saying, okay, what exactly can we do as a contingency for our body as a whole? That has not happened. Suggestions have been pushed through on the legislative level, through HUD, as I stated, and through various leading agencies that focus on housing authorities and its funding source and advocates for us, or they are responsible for lobbying for us at the Washington and on the state level, federal and the state level. So I don't know if I'm answering your question, but the only thing I can tell you at this point, we're watching the numbers. Depending on where, you know, if there's a cut, will determine how we pivot and what will happen. Our goal, as Chairman said, is to maintain housing for the families that we serve, in addition to the health of the authority, and is just as important for the maintaining our employees.
Are we, I guess more of a legal, can we fundraise? That's not the word I'm looking for, but are we able to get funds outside of federal funding from private?
In private funding, yeah, like what?
Several properties are to have private funding. Are you talking about for the federal ones?
Federal.
That, again, that is something that we would have to look into. I've never had to address that particular, but I think it's very restricted.
Two reasons. One, legally, I don't think it's legal to do so, but as a secondary matter, you only get large contributions like that if the donor is looking tax.
Right.
We're not a not-for-profit.
Right.
501c3.
Correct.
The concern, I think, is we're, 90 days into an administration who's seemingly, I don't want to say primary goal, has a significant goal of reducing the size of federal government. Housing and urban development has not yet been targeted for all intents and purposes. It would seem, again, seemingly only be a matter of time, and we have 4 years left of this administration.
3.5.
I'm trying not to be I'm trying not to be political, I'm trying to be a realist.
Yeah.
And in that scope of time, should this goal of the size of the federal government be continued at the pace that it's currently at, certainly HUD will be in the sites,
Yeah.
which will mean that, the primary customer of HUD, being housing authorities, will be affected.
I think
How that's, I don't think at the end of the day, it's in anyone's political best interest to put, 3,000 landlords out of business and whatever happens with their tenants. But there's gotta be some repercussion that'll be felt financially at the local level. What that is, we don't know.
I will say there's concerns, the immediate concerns, and what I have seen is that, like, for one, they're looking at programs. And one of the programs in which I just read today that has been pulled back is further affirming Fair Housing Act, which there was funding towards that initiative that has now been revoked. So I don't know if that's their plan to go after those certain types of programs.
It is, but it's also, there's gonna be more of that. It's just,
Well,
realistic.
I say that to say is that those programs also fund certain positions, not necessarily ours, but it does affect other agencies. In addition, I think that if they do anything, it's really, there's a large concern of those who work for HUD if they're going to have their job,
So, and we.
which then affects
we have
operations.
historically done a lot of things out of the scope
Mm-hmm.
financially of our responsibility. We have to really start to think about that, unfortunately. Some of the summer programs that we do, some of the things.
Which we've been chopping along the way, yes.
And it's very unfortunate that we have to get that deep, but we might have to get deeper.
We're looking, as I said, we look at the numbers, we look at the programs, where are we spending our funds?
The reality is 6 months is great, but we probably need a year.
Well, absolutely, absolutely.
But that's what I'm saying as far as being creative and not, this is, like you mentioned, this is not something anyone has gone on campus, right? Well, we have properties like we sold, just looking at, I'm just making out without knowing, is there properties that we could sell?
On it.
We have some,
Right.
and we have some interest, but nobody will ever give us a specific.
Exactly. And there's others.
Somebody won't give us a specific.
Yeah.
But, yeah, there are others that we can certainly look to
We've been looking at all, yeah.
engage,
This will also affect what's going on over on Morton Avenue, possibly, the raising of the buildings there and things.
Yeah.
100%.
It's all about what monies are coming into the state that we can retrieve, or on the federal level that we can obtain, so that we can, raise enough money to tear them down.
Valley, probably a new president coming in with a how, because naturally they want that property, campus.
Do they face a similar challenge, right?
Yeah.
You're right.
A meeting that I attended, South End, and there was this developer, on Orange Street, but they're going to build up apartments where there's empty lots at, and I think a question came up, about, will they be affected by the change through the Trump administration? They seem kind of confident that, they'll be building up various, apartments, from the empty lots in the south end.
So, to your point, the key in Project 2025, am I saying it correctly? Okay, is privatizing, right? So that's not necessarily the threat. It's really what they consider an entitlement program or funding that they deem is unnecessary. You know, not a necessity, or is pulling away from what their initiative.
Mm-hmm.
But privatizing, you know, properties, is something in which, as I interpret it, is a plan for them. So I don't necessarily see that area of development being, you know, threatened. It's the federal funds that go towards, you know, supportive services, programs such as, you know, that they deem as an entitlement program
But also,
or service.
You just said though, you know, that 100% affects us, right?
Sure.
So,
I'm sorry?
we have that property, which right now is a burden.
Yeah. And I'm looking at all of our burdens.
To get rid of that property, we are relying on public funds to
Yes.
help us get rid of that property so that we may in turn sell that property.
Yes.
What the federal government, to your point,
Mhm.
is saying, tough,
Mhm.
let the private sector take care of it.
Yes.
but that's what I'm saying, is there a way that we could talk to private funding?
Yeah, they don't wanna pay for it, nobody's gonna.
Is the $400 million already spent? I'm hearing a couple of different things about that the governor has said, Albany.
Oh, for the city?
It hasn't been
Can we
approved in the
apply for
it hasn't been approved in the budget.
I don't know.
So that's.
I know I believe there's a committee of people that have, you probably know better than I do, but there's a committee of people that are looking at it. You know, 475 of it's going to a museum, which sorely needs it. I suspect, you know, of that remaining, there's probably a fair amount accounted for.
So they're also trying to, so there's some, tenants at the counties in the city pay like a reduced rent.
Right.
Mhm.
And that group that you're talking to,
Yes.
That's where I'm referencing federal subsidies.
county subsidies.
Yes,
That could be
For the,
it's possible. I haven't read, I mean, the concept of the projected plan
the fund.
reads, there's, you know, could be a potential of looking into privatizing these types of properties.
On it tomorrow.
In what depth, what, you know, specific properties they are, I don't know.
services.
But that's my interpretation.
A lot of
The
the
city
land
actually,
bank properties.
he looked to buy it. I don't, I told her to create the.
So that they're talking, still trying to offload some of them, so now you got private developers coming up and building alongside of those. And that's what they're trying to do. So I'm assuming that they're still trying to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we have some of those properties.
Right.
Similar properties. Once a year, we probably get a phone call from the land bank saying, hey, what about X, Y, and Z
Yeah.
properties? And we're like, we're happy to hand them over.
And then they do nothing.
And we have the same conversation
Mhm.
the following year.
Same.
Yeah, it's a major issue.
Just the uncertainty of it all.
Sure, that's what it is.
It's nerve-wracking, you know, because,
You know, it's, we're not in a favored state to boot,
yeah,
which is gonna make it
correct.
more challenging.
And then, yeah,
And there's just a great unknown.
yeah. And because of that,
Courts are gonna resolve a lot, but who knows what.
Yeah, 3 years.
but because of all of the uncertainty, it's difficult to fill positions because some people, you know, they don't necessarily want to work with us
And the air
because they don't know.
financing of the stuff that's going on at the airport. And the grants, the $100 million, they got two grants. One $60 million from the Fed and one $40 million from the state to do the project overall. original cost, I think, was $120 million. The Fed stopped it.
That's a lot of money.
They subsequently started it again, but right away they stopped it. There was like a 30-day period when no money was going in out of that grant. And there was, like, there's nothing you can do.
Sure.
With anybody you could even call. They just say, no, we're not gonna pay it. Okay, we're in the middle of a project.
It's probably one of the larger projects too in our region, am I right?
Yeah, well, and subsequently they backtrack, but it just goes to show you, like, you know, these executive orders that come out, and you're probably staring at a piece of paper that I've seen already, but there's these, you know, these executive orders that come out, and then right away, there's activity from, you know, the Department of Budget at the federal level that says, okay, stop doing this, stop paying for that. But think about the speed at which these people are being laid off. It's hard to get rid of a public servant.
Yeah.
Never saw it before.
It's, yeah.
They're doing it in hours.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What is it, 3 hours, somebody, you know, here you go on.
So I guess what I'm asking,
Next.
and it could be, maybe I'm not saying it right, but would it help for us to put together a small team to really, like, what if?
I think,
Because, I mean, we don't want to think that way, but I think we almost have to.
I think there's I appreciate the idea of, but I think that first and foremost, we should rely on you, and I know you're working more with our advocacy groups, or the FATAs of the world. At the end of the day, you know, I think internally we have to allow you to do more of that and figure out ways to make sure that your time is less spent in the weeds, and more spent on some of these bigger issues, whether it's federal or state level. That's, you know, obviously for you to sort of redesign things or design things. I'm not sure we have the expertise to get into those weeds. We can sort of speak to it on a general level and understand it. I think we have to rely on staff to give us their opinion, their plan, and so where that information is coming from, I think depends on how you approach it. But I do think we can directionally say, we would like to hear more about this.
Absolutely.
And I agree with you. I just think, again, the what if is tomorrow an executive order comes out and the subsidy program is no longer. What do we do? Well, we already thought about that. This is what we'll do.
Yeah, I don't.
I was.
understand, in both of these opinions, my thing is, in order to form any type of a group, we have to know, and they're using the term weeds, you know, we have to know the intricate workings of the Albany Housing Authority, which I know I don't have, and I'm not sure if anybody really has it except Chiquita and probably her upper level management, which makes her the right person to do those things and present that to us. My opinion, it doesn't mean it's right, but that's where I'm looking at.
I can tell you, I know the financial impacts. I don't know.
Well, let me use an
You have to worry about
Sure.
this first.
Where are you gonna cut from?
Right. So I'll throw one idea out there, a thought, you know, based on your question. We have phase 2 Steamboat coming on, you know, down the pipeline, and there's, you know, the funding gaps that we have to fill in order to meet the obligations, in order for us to get to the closing, right? So some of, because Steamboat is a federal, or was a federal property, which is now converting into RAD, which is still somewhat of a federal program. But I say that to say is that coming from the original federal subsidy program, it's entitlement to capital fund improvement program, which is in a separate funding that we receive in order to do capital improvements to the property, to the federal properties. In order to get to and upgrade much needed, I would say improvements to the property, we're looking at that financial package. So to think at this point, okay, it's entitled to a certain amount of dollar, and I'm just throwing a dollar out there, $500,000. We're going to put that towards this development so that we can make improvements to this property. Now, given today's climate and not understanding where it's going, now you have to stop and think. Does it make sense to put it towards this development project to help close the gap so that we can improve our assets? Or do we plan for the improvement of a federal property, which it can be applied to because you can allocate it, which we, don't get me wrong, we try to, we work on our stock. However, thinking for the future, and to your point, we might say we have 3 years left on our boilers, so we'll address it in 3 years. But now, given the current climate, maybe we might now have to take those funds and improve them now because we don't know what the future is going to look like. These are the scenarios that we're looking at.
So here's what I would propose, and obviously it's open discussion. We have, for the foreseeable future, a standing action item or agenda item, if you will, where you provide an impact statement, update, if you will. And that update could be as simple as nothing to report this month, there have been no impact. Or there could be something that says we readjusted monies that were supposed to be for this boiler, and we did so because we are concerned about, right? So I think that will at least give us the most available, recent available information. I think it gives us an opportunity to discuss anything that we may hear, any concerns that we may have, and, it sort of becomes a standing item.
I think that's wise.
So again, I'm going to put it out there. I'm using that as an example, just of how we try to do our checks and balances.
If we could add that as, it's not a resolution, it would come
Agenda.
under advisement or my report. That's fine.
I would say, no, I want it to be a matter of record, agenda specifically, and I think that would make us all focus on it a little better. So, I don't know, under proposed approval of minutes, or under advisement rather than none, or have a none then two.
All right, so under advisement.
HUD update, or HUD funding updates, we call it, or something along those lines.
Under discussion.
Yeah, under advisement, and then it would be an item after, if you had specific items that you wanted to advise us on. Other than that, we would have a specific
You got it.
section that would say federal impact funding, or whatever the case, however we wordsmith it. So you may say none on everything else, and then a brief statement about
Understood.
this. That works for everyone?
For me.
use it as you please.
Thank you, Pastor, for bringing it up, and I think it's a work, we are in uncertain times.
Yes, we are. Okay, very good.
Certainly some impacts on what we do here, so, or may
And a
not.
good conclusion, Mike, I like that.
All righty. Do we have any other, questions, comments, concerns for the group?
Well,
You got something? Fire away.
tonight, the mayor and the police chief having a public safety committee meeting, well, in our neighborhood, at Giffen Elementary School tonight at 6. I just think it's important, I plan to attend, but, when the times that we live in, that's when violence and crime happens.
Yep.
And so, just wanted to make people aware of that.
That's fine.
The resource center continues to do the work, because that's also, the times that the families that residents that have the most need is times like this, Eggs are outrageous. I always bring that up. People are gonna call me the egg man from now on, because I do like eggs, and it's crazy the price of eggs. I'm actually trying to do a community give out of eggs, because I think.
I thought for sure you were gonna say community chickens, but.
I'm trying to find.
No, because there's laws around those chickens, but yeah. I just wanted, those two things I wanted to kind of mention about.
Thank you.
It's great how one of your department, the work that they're doing. And you look at, it's all in your report. I think they served about 115 families. Again, the need is great. I'm preaching to the choir.
Actually, 200 families,
Oh, sorry.
and about 3,200 pounds of food. But, I was trying to find a photo, because we have someone that likes to live downstairs in our atrium. And it has been a challenge for the past few months, speaking on public safety. But I can't locate the photo right now, but,
Food banks are.
yeah.
Be subsidized.
Yeah. Isn't it also school lunches? Yeah. Yeah. I don't know what these lawsuits do. I mean, I understand they're lawsuits, but I don't know, because they're in litigation, does it halt the action, or is it just really to fight it, to, reverse it, to what?
Most of the executive, not most, a good portion of the executive orders that stop the funding have actually been reversed at the truck, at the.
Correct.
So, but they're still they'll drag on, but at least it freed up the funding that was being locked up.
Right, which was one of our grants, which we're waiting on now.
I'll ask for a motion to.
I'll make that motion.
We're out of here.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.